And would people know? Yeah, they'll probably get it.
Yeah, they'll come in. I'm
Yeah.
sure they will. See if we can
We're
get,
live.
see if we have any.
All right, all right, all right. So, my friends, we're back again. And so sorry about uh, the tech glitch. I mean, hey, we're all Web3 guys here, right? I mean, this is Web2 technology. I mean, who works with this, right? This is a load of bullshit. But anyway, okay, so we're back again, and my friend Tony Drummond is live with us, and that's Tony Drummond, Web3 advisor, and of course, president of Moonbound. Uh, Tony, thanks so much for coming online.
Hey, thank you very much for having me today, Mash. Pleasure to talk to you again.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been a little bit. Uh, what? It's been a couple of weeks, maybe 2 3 weeks back. We spoke, and we shared a lot of information, exciting conversation that we had, and I've always been a big follower of your 1 minute videos and the way you kind of demystify Web3 tokenomics. And I thought that founders, Web3 founders, can get a lot of insight from your kind of perspective, right? So, on my end, I did look at Web3 startups back in 2022, the beginning of it, because I work with family offices, I work with angel investors, and all that. And but things did not take a good turn, and Web3 sort of took a backseat. But interest is now coming back. So, what do you think? What do you think of the whole shenanigan scenarios?
Yeah, I personally think just like any cycle, well, we're both old enough to remember the dot-com days, right?
Yeah,
So remember what happened there is the sewer pipes were kind of cleaned out, and then the real technology companies kind of took over from there. And I believe we're going to see the same thing here, where there was a lot of, hey, just buy this because it's going to go up, right? That was the main reason instead of this is a good technology. So I firmly believe that we're going to see a transition towards the legitimate blockchain based Web3 projects where it's really going to have a lot of valuable use cases. And I know you personally have some your own ideas, challenges that you're working to solve in many respects that we kind of talked about during our call. So things like this is what I personally get excited about, and I see the future of the tech transforming into. So much less let's buy this because it's going to pump, and more about let's buy this because we'll actually want to use it to get value from it.
and so are you seeing a lot more kind of positivity in terms of founders that you deal with when it comes to their projects and the kind of the stigma that has attached itself to Web3?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen a lot of positivity from the founders, and I think just in this environment, a lot of founders kind of expect what's happening right now to happen. I mean, we have bear market cycles, and we know the overall economy isn't the greatest. So, from my standpoint, I think if you just look at a Bitcoin price and say that's the state of Web3, it's a disconnect. And so, I think everyone that I'm working with is passionately building. I don't have people who are frustrated. The funding side, which is what you're also getting into and helping founders with, is really a critical area that I do see them having the challenges. And that's why I'm excited for what you're personally working on as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Builders always build, right? I think the culling was required to get rid of all the bad actors, and of course, a price needs to be paid for every bubble out there, right? And bubbles always, well, they tend to be cyclical, but at least they cull out all the bad actors, and then people like us can come in and try and make a difference. And in fact, just recently I've had well, I'm still in the middle of a project exit, an NFT project exit, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But for for the sake of this conversation, shall we take a structured approach and sort of look at some questions to start off with?
Yeah, sure. That sounds great to me.
So I've got the first question here. What are some common and expensive mistakes Web3 founders make?
Okay, so the first, let's talk about root cause. So a lot of people are just so interested in getting started with like their marketing right away that they don't really stop to pause and think about who are they marketing to, what's their main value proposition, and as such, they go through, hire an agency. The agency spends a bunch of money, and they don't really get the results that they're going after. So that's a big one that I really find. And if they just took a step back and said, hey, who are we marketing to? Who's our target audience? Who are our avatars? What are their pain points? How are we solving that? And just really taking the time to kind of procedurally map out a real strategy, man, they'd save themselves so much time, headache, and effort, let's just say. And that, to me, is where a lot of people get burned. The other thing that I've also noticed is there's a lot where founders don't really focus as much on the customer journey. What I mean by that is they won't look at how they're building their platform in the right way, and they won't consider how is somebody going to onboard into this platform and this ecosystem and make sure that that is a great user experience. And the reason why that's critical is if it's difficult, people walk away. You lose the conversion, right? And so again, going back to your marketing, if you're marketing, let's say I have a restaurant and it's closed, and just the same thing, if nobody can get into it, it's essentially closed, right? And I go ahead, I start marketing my restaurant. I wonder why nobody's eating there. It's closed. They can't get into it, right? It's the same exact approach, that all that's wasted. And the other thing is, this is an analogy I thought of where I was building a virtual reality experience, and we were struggling with an older audience on how to use it. And they were getting tripped up. They couldn't figure it out, and they're not gamers. And I had two options. I could say, well, they're not smart enough to use it, and that's their fault. Or I could say, all right, that's our job, is to make sure that they can get into it and use it. So that's what we have to overcome. And what I came up with is this haunted house mentality. And what that means is, when I think of the journey of the customer as like a haunted house, when you go into a haunted house, you always come out the exit. You don't get lost in a random room, and really that's how I think about the journey of the customer, is if we design the experience. So it may seem like there's some free will, but they go through the exact pipes that we want them to go through. They join the community, they go ahead and buy a product or service or whatever that looks like. We map that out and we design that so it's as frictionless as possible. That to me is a really critical component that people miss. That's a really critical component.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, customer journey is critical for everything, and it's amazing that they start out trying to figure out the customer's journey, but then they gotta kind of get distracted with all the other bells and whistles, and it's always about, okay, what are we gonna pull out of this, right? Rather than how are we gonna serve these customers that are on a journey. It's like abandoning them and then going off after these shiny objects. And I guess it's not just for Web3, it's for any kind of startup, SaaS products. And more you see, especially because of all the money that was pumped into, I would say, ridiculous SaaS products and SaaS ventures last year. But I guess that's coming to an end now, hopefully. So what challenges do non-technical founders face in Web3, according to you?
Yeah, well, I'll just say this because as we spoke about last week, or a couple of weeks ago rather, we're both developers, right? And so we have quite an advantage in that when we're getting into the technicals, we can understand them a lot quicker. We know if somebody's blowing smoke up our what, a lot easier.
Yeah.
You got to tell a little bit. We also know if somebody, if we get like a quote or a plan, we also know, from that, all right, do they actually know what they're talking about? Does this seem like a legitimate timeline? Is it too, let's say, optimistic, where they're just trying to get the deposit as quickly as possible just to give the client a good, timeline? Is that their prerogative, or have they actually thought it through? Do they have the right resources? So when I think about all these things and I think about a non-technical founder, how do they navigate that? And that to me is where the challenge kind of sets in. And that's why I believe, and I watched your LinkedIn Live last week where you also touched on this very topic, and I found that is important too. Because the non-technical founders, you might just need to have a technical co-founder on your team, or at least have a team member who's a CTO that can manage this. And how we personally helped clients overcome this is we're getting involved in technical consulting. And that's why we're doing that, is we help with the quote, we help with the specs, we help act as a non-biased third party essentially on their behalf. But the challenges I've laid out are excessive, and man, you can really get robbed in development in this space. I personally know two founders who have both lost $200,000 due to development companies taking their money and And I mean, it's really, really rough. One of them went over a year with one company, just locked up with them. And these are the challenges that people face: is you
Oh
can get
man.
scammed, you don't know any better, and by the time you do figure it out, you're kind of stuck. And the other thing is, as you know, as a developer yourself, is and a businessman, is you want to own your code. Okay,
Oh.
you want to own your code. And this is a huge one. Is you wouldn't believe how many people have over a year, they don't even have a company GitHub with the code deployed to it. What if that company just basically rug pulls you?
Yeah. Or hold them
They
ransom.
take yeah, they take everything. And
Yeah.
these are the things that us as developers say, wait, we gotta get this right away. I want the administration on all the back end. I want to be on the AWS, right? I want literally everything is supposed to be me as the business owner giving access, delegated access to the development team, right? And that to me is another huge mistake that will cost people dearly later on too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it's very worrying because of late, I'm looking at pitch decks and I'm talking to founders who are trying to push Web3 projects forward. And predominantly, yes, Web3 project is, of course, someone who is starting a Web3 project usually has a little bit of technical, kind of foray into it. But it's surprising because I'm finding technical people that are trying to push these projects forward, but are not specifically knowledgeable in the technology that they want to put out there. So I think it creates a sense of false confidence because the founders are now sitting there thinking, okay, yeah, I'm technical. I developed this Visual Basic application 25 years ago or whatever it is. And so I know about this. And then there's the other founder who says, oh, you know what? Yeah, I know all these investors. So don't worry about it. Let's put this. And what happens is that investors don't, well, some investors they're savvy, but most investors don't know that. When they look at the bios of the teams and then they look at the technical kind of experience that this person may have, 12 years at, I don't know, Enron, or 12 years at Siemens, and they think that translates to technical know-how. No, it doesn't. What do you think of that?
No, I think you're 100% right. And by the way, I was very impressed. I'm going to be 41 tomorrow. And when I was 16 years old, 25 years ago, I was programming in, I believe, Visual Basic 4. So I just,
I started with that.
real,
I did that
oh,
back
you
back
did.
in the day,
Okay.
1996, 97, 98. I was doing Visual Basic and then went to C, C++, C Sharp. Do you remember that? C
Yeah.
Sharp?
Uh, yes, I do. Well, I went more like the web development route, kind of when that took over. But yeah, I remember that, and I think you're 100% right. Is that just because you're a good business operator doesn't mean you can't get blindsided. And the people I did mention that have both lost $200,000. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not going to say what their names are, but these are people that have really good careers, actually, and really, it's not like this is some 20-year-old person who just got out of college or looking to build
Yeah.
something. These are people that used to run huge businesses. One of them oversaw a ton of stores and stuff. I mean, these are real problems, and you're 100% right. It's you only know what you know, and again, you can get a quote, and the company can seem professional, but again, they can take everything because they're great, maybe with this disguise. But again, I think it's a matter of knowing. And one also thing I want to say is if you don't know how to set up the processes in which the project progresses. For example, if uh, if you don't set it up with the right milestones, you could be giving I also know people who paid everything in upfront in some cases, right? I mean, these are really rookie mistakes.
Come on.
so, so you'd be surprised. Yeah, they pay it all up front and wonder why the job's not getting done. There's no incentive to get it done. What do they care? So it's I think you're right. It's from what I found, it's not like, oh, it hits the younger person more often than it does the experienced person. Non-technical, it hits everybody across the board. They don't know any better, and they think that's how it works. Many of them haven't bought custom software development before either, so they don't know the processes. Like if you were someone who is a marketing executive, you might be great at what you do and phenomenal, and then you get in this other area and you're like, wow, I think I'm doing it right, or they're saying the right things and this quote looks like it's right, but then you find out it's not, and these are the realities of the situation. So I haven't seen, let's just say that the potential for loss doesn't really discriminate from what I've seen in these regards.
So what do you think a Web3 startup, which has a couple of founders, let's say, one of them is technical, but as we discussed, not really specifically, probably doesn't know anything about tokenomics or whatever it is. What should they do to mitigate this and take those right steps? Let's say they don't have much money, they're bootstrapping, so they're going for a pre-seed or a seed funding round. But before that, what can they do to try and mitigate this?
Yeah. Okay. So here's what where we've been kind of focusing on a lot, and this is a process that I personally followed just as a project manager. I'll lay it out because I think it's just a smart process for anybody, whether you know development or not. Okay. Step number one, take everything within your ecosystem and document it as thoroughly as possible. And what I'll say around that is, let's say you have your product. Okay. Your product has various utilities on it, various use cases. Documenting how that product is going to be used in, let's say, a mind map, a process map, getting it really clearly defined and organized in the right way is really critical, because the more you do that, the more you'll understand it. Okay. And by the way, you can use a tool like Whimsical that I personally use for like everything for like $15 a month. You know, everybody can get on it and use it. So it really costs you nothing. Okay. So for a $15 tool, everybody can get on, do the mind mapping, lay out all the product very clearly, and then go through the process mapping and look at how a user might use this ecosystem. You don't have to be perfect. Nobody's asking for that. Okay, so once you have that kind of understood, and I think the next step that I typically follow from that is a written documentation. So what I will do from there is I will do the written specifications. And so again, you can use Google Docs for that. It costs nothing, it's free. You can go in there, and from there, what I'm really focusing on as I write my technical specification, like for example, one I have written early on when I started this business for a client was about 22 pages long, okay? And it wasn't like you had to be a technical person to understand it. We covered some of the technicals and the details of the product, but more importantly, what we did cover is the reason why we were doing things, okay? And I think when you cover the reason why you're doing things in the technical specification, it enables the people reading that to form the connections and understand the purpose of what you're actually trying to do. And also into the future. So when we think about tech debt and how that impacts people, if you have the reason why you're doing it, you know, for example, I'm doing it this way for this future result, well, that might also inform the tech stack. That might also inform scalability. You know, that might also inform costs. For example, if I'm doing this API call, or if I want this data so I can use it, you know, 100,000 times a month versus I want this data so I could use it 1,000 times a month, that might be much different from an API data cost standpoint. So I think, like, and that might also drive a development partner and say, you know what, you should use this, you know, instead, because you have this use case for these purposes, right? And so that to me is really important. Again, you can map it out very clearly. You get it all written down very thoroughly in your document, and you inform the reasons why so people can ask questions around that. What I've also done in there too is in that document, up at the top, I write out a list of questions, okay, that I'm going to be asking, okay? And, you know, those questions, I'll just pull it up here because I think they're all like pretty relevant questions. Yeah, I'll pull it up here real quick. But anyway, I think these questions are important because when you ask them, it helps inform what you get back. Okay, I'm going to read it that I did in this specification. What will building an MVP with the below features cost? How long will it approximately take? Should be used, in this case, I asked Bubble to build the MVP, which is a no-code, you know, platform, to make a complete React application. What are the recommended API services you will use? This will help us budget and understand operating costs. What experience does your team have building an application like this? What Web3 experience does your team have? What are your references we may speak with? Okay, and these are the exact questions I put in that technical specification. Now, if I get a response back and they don't answer those, that tells me that they're not looking at my document thoroughly. Or if they ask questions that are in the document, you know, granted, some they might have just missed it, but that tells me how thoroughly they read it, right? So I use all this stuff because I sourced a lot of work in my time across every area as a project manager. And I just asked, does this person actually care about what I'm asking them to do? And yeah. I test them. I'll even put it in a video sometimes in a Vimeo link, a private link. Yeah. And so if they watch it, I'll get an email notification. So did they watch the video? How quickly? Like I got somebody right now, I'm bidding something. They didn't even watch the video. It's been a week. It tells me that they're not looking at it. I'm not even going to use them. Not even going to collaborate with them. Not even going to consider it. So
Yeah,
I do these little test things. Like I try and test all this little stuff up front, right?
man.
So I don't have pain later on. Like I can learn so much from people's actions in the quote process that I can't learn that I can also learn later on much more painfully. You know what I mean? So I try and find the stuff out sooner.
And you know what? They're surprised that their ventures go to ground and they lose money when they can't be bothered. It's in fact they can educate themselves with that, right? At least look at it for curiosity's sake. And I don't know. So this brings me to kind of the discussion around the reality and delusion kind of two sides of the coin of Web3, right? So that's a big thing right now. So we have the reality of it, and Meta is, is showing us what the reality is. But then the delusion of a lot of these startups and ventures that are coming out. In your experience, now you through Moonbound, you work with a lot of ventures, founders, you provide them technical solutions, you do tokenomics for them, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But what what is your opinion in terms of the levels of delusion people have? Maybe a couple of examples without naming names that that you've seen in terms of delusion.
Yes, that's a good question. So in regards to like real use case versus kind of a false use case, let's just say that. So and I don't take it like people are trying to do that. I believe it's just the nature of they're excited about the technology.
Oops. Okay. Tony just dropped off. It could be because his live feed probably just cut off. So I'm just gonna wait for him to come back on. His phone may have died actually because he had to join from his phone. The first attempt. Oh, there he is. He's coming in. So I'm gonna let him back in. And okay, yeah. Just give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna add Tony back in. Add to the left, and before that, let me do some adjustments for Tony. And yeah, add to the left. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, I got a phone call and it completely
Okay, don't
kicked me.
worry. Yeah, that's the problem with when we use the phone. Let me try and zoom you out a little bit. Is that better? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Real
All
good.
right, we're back on. So, yeah,
We'll keep
please.
rolling. So your question was about the delusion versus the reality. So from my standpoint, like I was saying, I don't believe people are trying to do it on purpose. I just think it's a matter of excitement to enter the space. They want to build a new technology. And one part that I, without mentioning names or anything like that, I don't have to. One thing I will say is what I try and do early on is gut check the actual use case. Okay, for example, they might be excited about it, but when I start asking questions around how often it might be used, is this a real product? Who's the target market? And I start digging in there, then they might even find out, wow, it's not really as valuable as maybe we thought it would be, right?
Yeah,
Or maybe
yeah,
it doesn't have the right value proposition. And then what I try and do from there. And this is why I also believe people come in the first place. So I don't criticize people for this. I just try and look at what they're trying to accomplish. And there's one project in particular that actually has become, guys are close friends of mine now, and they first started off as clients. And now we've become good friends. And what we're working on with their project, initially, it didn't really have the right value proposition. What we pivoted towards was gaming. We have a really cool gaming project they're building right now with really beautiful artwork and kind of set like ancient Egypt type mindset, like type aesthetics. I mean, with the really
nice.
cool like addictive trivia game kind of thing. So, I mean, when I look at something like that, it might just be a matter of the team was trying, and they were trying to do something really cool with the project, to like fund like ancient archaeology, because we don't even know where we come from as people. They were building a project to help fund that and exploration, and the whole project was kind of based on that. And one of the guys we were talking about like Freemasonry even too, like because I noticed some Masonic things in there, which was pretty cool. I held I held up this, and I said, "Hey, I'm a perpetuity." He's like,
Oh,
"Oh,
nice.
yeah."
And so we had a connection there. So what I'll get at is there's a lot of people out there that are really just trying to build a cool project. And that to me is where we have to just ask ourselves honestly and say, is this something that people truly want to get into? Or is this a real value proposition? Okay, so there are instances like that. I also believe there's a lot of fake, let's call it on purpose delusion, where they have an NFT, they just sell that, and they have a community, and that's their only value proposition is a community. That's going to go to zero because all people in the community are watching is price, right? And as soon as price starts to go down, if we're really a community, like I just shared, I'm a Freemason. We have a community, but now we're not looking at the price of a token. I don't look at the price of my membership card and say, oh, that dues card costs me $70 a year. Now, where's it going to go? I'm not looking at that, right? I think that is really the right mindset is what separates people. And I also am so excited for, let's call it the real world use cases we're going to start seeing coming in, especially in regards to supply chain and things like that. So that to me is where I get really excited, is when I start thinking about the real value propositions of Web3, when I say, you know what, this is something that can be used all over the place, like even in printing, packaging. Where's the tree that was harvested to make this paper? Where did that come from? How do I have this, data that's maybe decentralized, that company's database, which, as you know, can just be easily manipulated, right?
Yeah.
So these things, this stuff. So this is what I'm really excited about personally, are these real world use cases that will drive the real value in the future. And then, we'll see where it all goes from there. So I'm very blessed to have a lot of great projects I work with. And one other thing is, if I see a project where it generally doesn't look like it has any use case, I can't do anything with it, I don't even really take the sales call or anything. I just tell them nicely it's not really a fit and just wish them well. So there's a lot of that still out there too.
Absolutely.
In that case, but.
Absolutely. And idea validation, I think, is a big time. And in fact, my next question was going to be, for a little while, I avoided any pitch deck that came to me that said Web3, right? I just avoided it last few months. But it's time to I can't avoid them all the time, always. So I'm looking at them, and idea validation, I think, is very important. People who believe in these, like you said, there's the intentional delusion, and there's, of course, the mistaken delusion. The intentional delusion is, of course, complete fraud. They just want to make some money and, push off. But mistaken is where a lot of the majority of these projects are. So in terms of validation, idea validation, for founders, what do you suggest? Like I was thinking, for instance, that I'd probably do a live show, one episode every week, where I just, people can send me ideas or they can come online, and then I'm going to be really brutally honest and shoot it down if I have to, or say, yeah, at least it looks on the face of it with a little information. What do you think of that? Idea validation, how important is that? And are people, taking it seriously?
Yeah, you know what? I will tell you that is really important. And one way to actually kind of validate the idea, in my opinion, is to ask people other than yourselves and your team, because I feel that delusion also,
Yes,
it's sort of like it makes its way across to other people, and they believe, wow, this is the greatest thing forever. And we're all guilty of that too. We're all guilty of this. Yeah. And that's why it's so important, in my opinion, to have, like I said in the beginning of our call here, the customer mapped out, the avatars mapped out, so you can actually talk to the end user that you're thinking of going to and say, hey, does this actually sound like something that you'd be interested in? Does it make sense? Is the pricing model there? Like, for example, I do that in my business. I had a new offering I recently put out. I sent it to a client, and the guy goes, Tony, that's too cheap, double the price. And I did, and I sold one right away. And so, I can't express enough how important that validation is when you actually bring people into that process and help them kind of build that with you. It could make that idea so much more valuable, in my opinion. It's really absolutely critical. And
agreed.
The other thing,
completely agreed. And Tony, are you there? Are you dropped off again? You got another call coming in? All right, guys. Tony will be back in just a second, please. Patience is the name of the game. And thank you so much for putting through this episode. Like I said,
am I back again?
Oh,
am I back again?
Yeah, Tony's back. I got
another phone call.
Yeah. That's it's the first show. Now we know. Now I know what to look out for. So Tony. So as I was saying, I was running away from. Okay, of course, but for someone who might be watching who probably doesn't have a context here, I'm a startup advisor, but I'm also an angel investor, and I also represent a syndicate of family offices and angel investors. Now, so with that context, what I'm about to ask you is, I was running away from these Web3. In fact, just in the last couple of days, I've had about 6 or 7 different pitches coming in. And when I say pitches coming in, they're not just random people emailing me. These come through connections, which means that there is a level of trust there. It's not just, a cold DM from, and then the message starts off, "Dear Joe." And I'm like, who the hell is this Joe, right? It's the DM to me. But anyway, so as a friend and as a Web3 advisor, someone who is experienced, and what should I do, not just as an angel investor, but as someone who is going to be representing these in front of the family offices? Is this a good time to start looking at them, or should I continue saying no to them for the next 6 months or so?
Well, I would start looking at the ones that you personally feel like whatever your investor group can add value to. Like you yourself, even if you can get in there and give them, like if you can get an investment in there, obviously the investment is, the money's great, but also the guidance is also great. And obviously your distinct business career, I think that could also be very helpful for people. That's why what you're building with, you're helping people really through Founderama is help, like, basically help grow the funding and help them get on the right track from what I've seen, what you've been putting out so far. So my opinion is I would say yes, because truth be told, a lot of these are going to take time to build the technology. Like, for example, if you get funding, great. Sometimes most of that is actually going to be used for like building the MVP and things of that nature, right? Because that's a big cost and marketing. So understanding that it might take 6 months just to build it, and then after the 6 months, who knows where the economy will be? That could be a great timing thing. But I would also say right now is a great time to be very selective, because the funding is very tight. So if you find something where it's like, wow, this is a really great project, look at the team, they're incredible, like that's one right there where I would try not to let it go. But if you see it, and it's like they don't really have any experience in the space, it doesn't, like, you kind of know with your gut when you look at the team and you kind of look at the product, does this make sense? Can they execute? That's kind of what I would judge versus just waiting 6 months, because nobody knows what the future may bring, and when the market might turn around. And I personally believe, like, even in the gaming side, Web3 is going to be really huge there, because the ability for people to own their own assets, the ability for interoperability and the integrations, the securities, like even, as a developer, for example, we have gaming problems where we have dupes in a game. Like, for example, somebody dupes an item. Well, if every item is an NFT, well, we're not going to dupe, because we have a smart contract that governs the exact total supply in that case, right? And that right there, like, these things are what I'm really excited about personally. And any project you see like that, that are kind of gaming with real valid use cases, I see that as huge. And also looking on the finance side, I see a lot of finance projects out there. And again, if it's promising high yields and this kind of stuff, I don't touch those. I'm looking, I wouldn't even think of those. I'm thinking more for like really legitimate type DeFi applications and things like that I'm seeing, like some real good use cases around.
Yeah, no, I had one come in a couple of days back, and it's a system that promises 1,200% every 45 days or some nonsense like that. And I hit the delete button so hard, I almost broke the keyboard, right? I had to get a new one. And those are coming in thick and fast. So that actually segues us into tokenomics, right? Because at the base of all this is tokenomics. Tokenomics, the design, the economics of tokens, and the behavior of players. When I say players, I don't mean gaming, but general players on the platform. So my question to you, why are tokenomics critical in Web3?
Yeah, well, this is an area I'm most passionate about kind of in Web3, because I feel like it's an area founders often neglect. They're excited to build the MVP. They're excited to do the marketing. Like, I just got off a call this morning where they're like, yeah, we have a lot in our marketing budget, and I'm going to be helping them with their tokenomics, right? But, it's almost like the tokenomics is sort of like an afterthought. And the reason why it's so important to not make it then is that's literally the value of your economy. That's the in your token, right? Like it's almost like you don't care how your business performs. That's what you're thinking when you neglect the tokenomics in that way, and you take a slice of, like I have a pizza. I'm just going to say, all right, 20% for this, 5% for that. And I'm not really thinking about when it unlocks or anything. And the other thing that I'll also say is with this too is people look at the token as a way to fund their project in some respects, like later on, like I'll have this much for development later. Well, you also need a way to generate fiat and actual realized revenues without selling your token, right? And I know you made a comment on something I posted, I believe it was yesterday. I kind of on this as well in that simulation where you don't want to be selling your token. And here's the mindset I would encourage people to get at when they think about this stuff. Okay, so for example, let's say it's been a year and my tokens are vesting now for development or marketing. Okay, so I'm going to market my project and I'm running out of money because I didn't plan right. And now I say, thank God these tokens are unlocking. You look at my chart and it's going down 60%. I'm in a downtrend. You think you're going to be able to look at that chart and sell off a bunch of tokens into that and then market after that? And then the community is going to be like, who's selling all this? And, these are the things people don't think about later, right? So, and this is why it's so important when it comes to tokenomics. It's not just about the token as the project progresses, but in the beginning, are we raising enough capital? Do we have to raise capital and then make that all go into selling tokens? For example, if we do that, then we pump up our fully diluted market caps much higher. And really, the token itself, in my opinion, should act as the easiest way I could think about it is like if I look at, in an example I'll give is like Clash of Clans. Let's say their hard currency in their game, if that was a token, who knows what that market cap would be now? It would be insane. It would be so insane. It would be nuts, right? And it would be absolutely crazy. And World of Warcraft gold or something like that, where if that had a limited supply. I was playing World of Warcraft back when it came out. I think it was like 2003 or something. That's 20 years ago of people buying the gold and using it, right? And who knows where that market cap could be. It could be crazy, right? And when you think about that, to me is what I think about a actual token is it has to have a utility value to it, or if it's something for governance, it has to have a real value proposition for that too. So the token needs to be aligned around whatever the incentives are that you're looking to build. And I think the same thing is true, like if you look at governance, if you really want this token for governance, well, then why do we always need a liquidity pool where they can sell it? Why do they always need that kind of a thing kind of going on? Right? Are there other ways that we can have a governance, effect or whatever the case might be and actually have a token without that liquidity pool that can just be dumped into later where people are just looking at a price, right? So I think there's many different ways that we have to look at a token where it doesn't always have to have a liquidity pool. It really is an asset that could be used and can be applied. And because it's through a smart contract by its very nature, I love the fact that it's all like programmed, it's traceable on the blockchain, there's constraints around it, it has some security aspects to it. And that to me is like what I really think is critical when you consider the whole token in the economic model of the business. It all has to work together in the right way. And the last thing I'll say is the business has to have a way of making money outside of just selling its own token for the reason I just said, because later on, when you will have a bear market, you want your company to last 20 years, think you want to have a bear market, good luck trying to sell it later on, right?
Absolutely. And also it sort of creates the bad actors because the intentions are now more than it's beyond utility, right? It's more about what can we sell and how much money we can make, which is okay. I mean, you wanna do that, that's fine. But as long as there's utility for others, that's pretty important. So tokenomics, I think it's something that is very important. It is a difficult thing. It's not that everybody can wrap their head around it. Even technical people who are pushing Web3 projects, they only look at the token as a source of making money. But beyond that, it becomes blurry. They want to push that off to someone else, and let them take care of it. Let them create the architecture. Let them design it, and so on and so forth. So in terms of founders of Web3 who don't have this knowledge and don't have the time to pick it up, what would be your kind of final advice in how should they or where should they go? Who should they find to help them with tokenomics?
Yeah, so in my opinion, there's some great resources out there. One of the ones that I found is there's a Notion that has it has so many different links in there
Yeah.
that go into Twitter threads and everything. I
The
mean, it was
DAO
crazy.
guys.
I have it bookmarked
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a tokenomics DAO as well.
Yeah.
That's very popular. They do some great work. For me too, here's what I just recommend is I watch Dennis Rodman when he used to play, I'm from Chicago. So when he
Yeah.
used to play basketball, he used to say, you know what, I just used to study how the ball's traveling, where it bounces off the rim.
Yeah.
That's what I do is I look at, all right, this project's going to launch. What does the tokenomics look like? And then I kind of see how that performs. Do they have a lot of selling pressure? If they do have it, how's it performing? So to me, I kind of study how things are actually performing out in the wild because I think that's the best way to learn. And it's not like I'm investing, I'm just watching it. And I also will look at projects that even now that we're in a bear market, everyone's pretty much down by a significant amount, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I kind of look at those projects, their allocations, and say, all right, how did this perform? Like one I'll throw out is animal concerts. You look at the tokenomics model, you'll find that private got like so much, team so much, public like 5%, right? So if public has 5%, everyone else has like 50, 60%, you're just going to dump on them by a factor of 12. You're going to get crushed by selling pressure, right? Liquidity pool can't sustain it, So it's things like this that I think when you intentionally study that stuff and learn about it, and it does take work, it does take time and effort, you can get pretty smart. Another one is unit.ventures is a website you can go to.
Okay.
And unit.network is one. And they have some tokenomics things on there. And I'm a mentor there right now on community. And it will also help in some tokenomics stuff as well there.
Okay.
That's one. And on my profile, I have a checklist where I go into tokenomics. And I have a whole checklist for that to help them. It's the first section actually in there because I view that as most important for a project. Because if your token is worth nothing, and that's where you're driving a lot of value from, it doesn't have any really much use after that point. So, and then also just follow on LinkedIn. I post about this stuff all the time in a way really to help people as much as possible. Like you mentioned earlier in our call, my videos are about a minute and a half. So in a minute and a half, I'll teach more very quickly in a quick summary than you'll find in a lot of times 20 or 30-minute videos. They're bite-sized, quick hits on a relevant topic. Here's a liquidity pool with this. Here's a liquidity pool with this. Here are the differences. Here are the risks. Here's why. And all of that in a minute. And people can walk away like, wow, I learned something great. That's my whole purpose there. So that's some resources. And I'm also going to be spinning up a newsletter as well.
I love those short videos because they're to the point. They pick one particular one. They're very surgical and bang, to the point. Fantastic. So I'm putting down a link here in this. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's Tony's LinkedIn. If you follow Tony, I'm telling you guys, every day, actionable items, strategies, insights, because insights are very important. Look, you can go out and get a lot of information out there, right? You go to ChatGPT or whatever, and then there's DAOs, and you can read articles. But what happens is, and I've experienced this myself because I went through the NFT building process and successfully exited with a 7-figure kind of a deal that's still going on. They're doing due diligence and all. But when I began my journey, there was so much information. Sometimes information is so much that it just paralyzes you. But what you need is this insights from experienced people. That's why you need an advisor. That's why you need someone on your team that can process these things, and instead of going into the theory of who designed tokenomics in the beginning in 1923, some shit like that, right? No, it is about today. What's happening? You're seeing examples of people, rug pulls and all, and then they come out with tokenomics designs, token designs that are really, when you scale that up, it's gonna go to shit, right? So how do you deal with that?
Yep.
It's, people like Tony, myself, I don't talk much about Web3, but I may ramp it up. But Tony talks a lot about it. So, Tony, Q&A. Let's see if we have any questions from people. Okay, I'm just going to go and look at some of the questions. Right, Dharminder. I don't know if Dharminder is still around. He asked this question a little while ago. I tend to do the Q&A only at the end. Knowledge from the past is only, 20 years. Yes, so he says, knowledge from the past is only sometimes viable now. Do they mean 20 years of experience or done the job once and copied it 19 times? So what Dharminder is, this is going back to when we were talking about founders and co-founders and members of the team that have tech experience but don't really have specific experience. That's what Dharminder is referring to. And yeah, it's not a question, but I agree, Dharminder. That's absolutely right. Simon, a friend of mine, actually he's coming in live tomorrow, is asking a question. What do you think about DAO in terms of founders pre-seed fundraising for scenario A? So I'll repeat it again. My apologies. The question is, what do you think about DAO in terms of founders pre-seed fundraising for A, founders who have everything in place, investable deal flow, versus B, founders who maybe don't have everything ready good? Example is a founder with great idea, highly skilled in tech, but no team, bad pitch deck, no financials. Okay, so two scenarios, and I'm going to let you answer this in just a second. I just want to clarify it because it's a dense question. So two scenarios. Scenario A is a founder has everything in place. So he's got a team, maybe he's himself, someone like you who knows this, the tech inside out, or has a co-founder or has team members, and they have everything in place for the pre-seed or seed funding. That's number one. Number two is founder who has nothing. And the question is, what do you think about DAO in terms of these founders?
Yeah, so I think from a funding standpoint, and he's kind of meaning about the DAO, is that what he's getting at? I'd have to get more clarity in that. So from my standpoint, I will always pick scenario A. Okay, and the reason why I'll say that is because I feel like scenario B, you're too early. You haven't done enough homework. You haven't built a team. You haven't proven that you can execute. You're really just somebody with an idea. You know what? So many people have ideas, but for me, what gets me excited, like I'll tell you right now, what gets me most excited when I start working with the founder, like I got off a call today with a new person who's going to become a client, and they showed me their complete plan. They got it all organized, detailed. They know what they're doing. I can tell they have a strategy. I could tell they're professional people. You know, given the options, why would I choose scenario B? It doesn't make any logical sense. And then if you're going to compete, like this is a very competitive environment right now. Why would you yourself willingly put yourself through that through that like gauntlet or meat grinder of let's call it destruction, where you're not really well prepared and you're just going to get hammered with questions, and really you're not even ready to talk to anybody yet, because until you have a team, you can't even do anything, right? You can't even do anything. Like you're just somebody with an idea. So from my standpoint, I also believe, like from a performance standpoint, if somebody is really experienced as well and has all that done, you're going to move forward that much faster, really fast. Like let's say I'm leading a Web3 project, the speed of execution it will go through, the quality of people I'll be able to bring into that team, I'll be able to put together a team of, let's say, 5 or 6 A players that will crush a 20-person B, C player team. And we'll probably need a fraction of the money because we're not going to waste it. We know exactly what it's going to do. We can plan it all out. To me, that is exactly who should be receiving funding, because that's going to enable the efficiency of that capital. And also investors, the VCs, are basically taking gambles on all this. You know, they're betting on like one of these out of however many are going to work out, right? So why would they bet on the one that doesn't have, many odds? Like, you got this horse you're going to bet on. Why pick the one that's mangy versus the pristine, one that's going to be run, right? Doesn't make any sense.
And it's mind blowing. I mean, I have an example right now. Came in a couple of days back, and so it's the team is not there. The co-founders, one is from Siemens or something like that, and the other is from ex-Google or whatever. Yeah, great, fantastic, but nothing to do with the current project, and they got nothing else going on, and they're asking for $1 million in safe investment. You know what that is, right? So there's not going to be any equity, but it's going to be converted into equity later on. Blah blah blah, based on activity triggers, and I was like, the hubris. I mean, and you know what? Sometimes I don't hold back, right? I mean, that's one of my flaws. But I sent back an email saying, "Are you guys crazy?" I literally said this. You're offering safe You're not even giving equity, of course, because they cannot work out the equity. They cannot evaluate it because they don't have none of this. And you're right. Projects like that don't deserve the money. Projects like that got money back in 21, 22, and look what happened, right? So no, you're right. They don't deserve that funding. So yeah, I got another question coming in here. Can you see this? John Lambella.
I can't on my phone.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. I'll read it out. So John Lambella, thanks for this. He says, what's the best way to raise funds or crowdfund in the Web3 space? And what are the incentives that would make sense for users willing to invest in a Web3 project? So what John is asking about, a Web3 project putting into a crowdfunding space, what kind of incentives can we offer so people will come in and invest in it?
Yeah, so first of all, one way you can kind of like bootstrap this a little bit, okay, and actually raise some capital. That's how we started with our project. We didn't have pitch deck, all this. We did it very much grassroots, kind of grew a community, and then we did a private sale through that. And yeah, that's how we actually had our own team that funded it. My dad, my brother, everybody, we all like put our money into this to build it, right? And so what I'll share is there's a way of bootstrapping kind of crowdfunding approach, and there's launch pads and platforms out there that let you do that. Step number one is really you should build that initial community, okay? And those community members should be of people who actually want to use your token in the future, okay? They should not be more speculative type buyers, okay? That's really important. Because if all of your, I'll review a strategy here in a second, but if all of the initial floor of what can be bought is by speculators, expect them to sell later. You want people who are like, wow, I love this game, I love this application, I can't wait to use this, I'm excited about this, and that's who you want in there, not people just looking to shape profits later on, right? And granted, they will shape profits. That's why people are buying this in the first place. You got to respect that, but don't make it the majority. Build a community of people who love what you're doing. You could do that through growth hacking. I know a lot of people who build the community through hardly any marketing spend, through just smart marketing tactics, okay? Now, once that's there, you still have to consider their perspective, and their perspective is really on the time horizon. So, for example, if I'm going to sell a portion of my supply and they say, you know what, 5 years later, you're going to get your tokens, they'll be like, I don't want that crap. You know what I mean? So you got to try and look at it reasonably, look at your own timeline and say, all right, if I'm going to be live in, let's say, 6 months, and I can give somebody maybe a 25% bonus in regards to what that, or a discount rather, in regards to what the launch price might be, if they go ahead and buy the token early, and I can have a reasonable vesting schedule where it's not going to lead to a ton of selling pressure, that could be a great incentive. That can enable you to get that initial liquidity so you can actually fund that. And again, it's not an overly excessive, bonus. There are some where I see, all right, when we're going to be live, you're going to be up, 1,000%. Well, that's all right. That sounds great, but just keep in mind when your project starts growing, that's going to dramatically increase the ROIs for those investors. Like if I'm somebody who bought in at a 10 million versus a 5 million, and I go all the way up to 100 million, it's the difference between a 20x and a 10x, isn't it? It's huge.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that, how much that could actually be as it scales up, like we were talking earlier. So I think looking at the scalability of where you can go and kind of gut checking that is important. But there are platforms out there where you can actually crowdfund things. And I'm not going to mention any because I don't like to promote stuff like that, but or just promote platforms because it's just risky on my part. However, there are numerous platforms out there where you can crowdfund stuff. I also know if you're going to sell a portion of your business, you can also look at like WeFunder is one. I know there's people that sell equity in the business there. That's things where if you have traction, that's a way to crowdfund. But again, you have to have some form of traction, in my opinion. You have to have people in the community. You got to have waiting lists. You have to have some form of development pipeline. You have to have something there when you're kind of doing that. Otherwise, it's going to be a rough sell because people have been burned so many times in this space,
That's a fantastic answer, Tony, because that's what you are. You're a real guy. And that's what John Lambella further adds. He says, actually, I would like to schedule a call offline with you, Tony. There's tons of stuff I would like to share with you and see how we can pull a few things off. So it's on the comment section, so you can just click on that and reach out to John, or John can reach out to Tony. John, just I think are you guys connected? Maybe you guys are connected. If not,
I know him already. We're connected already. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic.
He's going to message me probably. We'll be all right.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, actually. And that, because yes, people are looking at crowdfunding, they're looking at pre-seed, seed funding rounds and the rapidity with which applications are coming in is it's on the one hand it's exciting, but on the other it's also worrying because this is where cheap money starts flowing in, and we've seen what happened. But yeah, I think that's about the questions we have, unless maybe there are people on YouTube, which I don't know. But Tony, that's been a fantastic conversation. Yeah, we had a bit of a false start with this. I gotta fix that. So this link thing, I'm gonna test it tomorrow to see what's happening. Maybe it's not working on a desktop. Maybe it worked because it worked for me on the phone, but that's because I had to test it with the phone. I couldn't know what I'm saying. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, John has further messaged something else. Okay, that's fine. You can read the comment there. But Tony, so final words or a question for, I don't know, whatever you feel like saying, just throw it out there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me today. And I know we'll be talking tomorrow as well during our call. So I'm excited to chat with you, Mash, and those listening. This is a professional guy, so it's not very often you get to meet somebody with your level of experience that's also an engineer. I think that's also really, really cool to have somebody who understands the engineering side, but also the business side of the equation. I mean, I can't express enough how much value that's driven me in my own respective career. And you were somebody who was hired, I think you said from India by Microsoft, you were kind of recruited, so I just, wanted to kind of prop that up and just say that's why I'm excited to continue this collaboration, is I feel I can learn from you as well. And one thing I'll just kind of throw out here is founders who are looking for help in their project, the easiest thing you can do is go to my profile. You'll see the first feature thing is a checklist. And actually, I have an updated one I'll be releasing in about a week probably. I have it ready. I just want to make sure I have the right timing with it. And that has 175 different items people can actually check off and across every area of their project. So, I mean, it's to me, it's I'm not just saying it's because it's me, but I've yet to find a giveaway more valuable in this space. And really, my whole goal is not just to figure out how many, because I'm only one person, how many clients can I onboard, how much money can make this, that, the other thing. It's really how many people can we help? And that's sort of my approach. And those who follow me on LinkedIn will see that if I had something that was worth $100,000, I'd give it away on LinkedIn. I don't care, because to me, that's the essence of really being a creator that drives value for people. And then there's a good subset of people who will say, you know what, I want help with that. And then they reach out. And that's how business, in my opinion, should be done. And that's how I'll try and do it in this space. So those of you who are interested in learning Web3, simply follow, connect, turn on the bell, and I'll try my best to keep teaching you.
And I completely agree with that. And that's why I think we're brothers, because and I posted a comment yesterday when you posted that saying you're giving away trade secrets. And I think we believe in ourselves, and we believe in the goodness of giving. And that's why I think, you know what, you're putting secrets out there, because at the end of the day, if you can do it, by all means, go ahead and do it. No one can stop you by holding on, by hoarding knowledge. Nothing is going to happen. And there are people who will come for the specialized. And that's why I share a lot of my angel investors in my network. They're getting a little icky, with my videos these days. But you know what? The more icky they get, the more I'm going to share, because at the end of the day, look, knowledge right now with ChatGPT will tell you everything that we spoke about right now. But it cannot come up with the insights. It cannot come up with that experience that, for example, I had, or you had, Tony, a couple of weeks back with a client or with a project or with a funding that fell through at the last minute, and you've already spent $20,000 flying to Qatar and all that, right? That's where our power comes in. It's the experience. So thank you so much for that. That drop is fantastic. Keep the good stuff coming. And tomorrow we are on a call, so I look forward to that. So till tomorrow, take care. Thanks for coming, and let's keep this going.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. Been a pleasure. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, Tony. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.